Hi there, Catherine Walters from the Knitted Raven coming to you again today. I want to talk about wire today and some of the things I wish I'd known when I started wire working. Specifically, I want to talk about a couple of things. So I actually wrote them down so I hopefully will stay on track. I want to talk about why wire hardness matters. I want to talk about why two different types of wire with the same hardness descriptor are not actually going to perform the same. I want to talk about why gauge matters. I want to talk about why I don't use craft wire in my jewelry making. And I want to talk about why copper is an excellent choice when you're starting out. Why I didn't reuse skinned electrical wire. And why it's important to sort your scrap wire right from the get-go. So that's what I'm hoping we can talk about today. Right now, a certain cat has just decided she wants out through that door. I'll be right back. Cat has been rescued, back to regularly scheduled programming. So wire for jewelry crafting comes in different hardnesses. You've probably seen this online or in stores. It'll be described as dead soft, half hard, or hard. Now these terms mean pretty much what you think they would mean, with dead soft being the easiest to work with. Wire hardens gradually as you manipulate it, and there will be times when you actually do things to make it harder on purpose. Such as using a plastic mallet or a metal hammer to finish off a piece. Hardening occurs at a molecular level. As the metal is worked, it becomes stiffer and more brittle. Eventually, if it's overworked, it'll become so hard it will break. And the only way to soften hardened wire is to anneal it, and that involves the application of heat. So if you're hoping to avoid using torches for now, the best way to do so is to buy your wire dead soft. I do buy half-hard wire for certain things, and we'll talk a bit more about that in some other videos, but there's times when I will buy a half-hard spool of wire because it cuts down on the finishing work that I need to do. But for the most part, if you were to check the many spools of wire sitting around this little workbench, you'd find pretty much 95% of them are dead soft. Now, dead soft actually means different things. And when you are looking at different types of wire, just because it's called dead soft bronze or dead soft brass or dead soft copper, when you start working with these, you're going to find out they're not all the same softness. For example, copper wire is much softer than dead soft bronze or dead soft brass, and certainly softer than dead soft stainless steel wire. As you become more experienced working with different types of wire, you're going to learn what types of wire lend themselves to different sorts of projects. And this leads me to the next topic with respect to wire is wire gauge. Now, gauge refers to the thickness of your wire. The lower the number, the thicker the wire. Now, for example, a 16 gauge piece of wire is my go-to for medium to larger size pendant frames. My super large pendants, I'll even drop down to a 14 gauge. For earrings, earring frames, I usually tend towards 16, 18 gauge. Occasionally, I might go as high as 20 gauge if they're really small. I also discovered sometimes you can make this gauge and hardness combination work for you. For years, I used 18 gauge copper to make most of my shawl pins of a certain style. And I recently discovered I could make a lighter shawl pin by using 20 gauge bronze. It worked out just as well and held up just as well, but turned out to be so much lighter. So sometimes you can make this gauge and hardness thing work on your own behalf, as you'll discover as you work more. As my own style evolved, I learned I gravitated more towards certain gauges for certain things. So I'm going to discourage you from running out and buying humongous spools of wire of any gauge starting out. I actually did a little bit of that, and as a result have some very large spools of wire, like this large, of certain gauges that I may never actually use up completely. It's much better when you're starting out to buy spools this size. Of course, in a finer gauge wire, you get far more yards of wire than if this was a thicker gauge wire, but this is a nice convenient size to work with. So I'm just telling you that to save yourself a little bit of money. Now, people often ask me why I don't use craft wire in my jewelry, and there's a couple of reasons. First off, people want to know what's in that wire because people with allergies to metals are very particular about what kind of jewelry they will buy. And you need to know what's in that wire. Using quality materials will also encourage people to value your work, and that's really important if you're going to start selling it. Many craft wires come in lovely colors, and I discovered early on, I bought a single spool of a really pretty turquoise blue craft wire in a 26 gauge, and I tried to do some Viking wire knit with it. And by the time I was done, I was near tears because as you know, when you're knitting with wire, the wire rubs back and forth across itself, and at the very end, you have to pull it through a draw plate. My finished piece of Viking wire knitting looked like it had been through the wars with many places where the coating had rubbed off. It was really disappointing. Pure metals like fine silver can also have some additional bonuses. As we move on and we start talking about making our own head pins and findings like that, a metal like fine silver doesn't have fire scale on it. So if I choose to make a head pin out of sterling silver, I have some cleanup work to do. If I choose to do it out of fine silver, I have no cleanup to do. I might have some hardening to do because it's a much softer wire. But there are times when that ability to burn clean might actually work in your favor. I also recommend when people are starting out to really strongly consider starting out with copper wire. It's really economical, and I guarantee you will not feel nearly as bad about your mistakes as you would as if it was sterling silver or fine silver. It's very malleable and forgiving. It's still my actual favorite metal to prototype any new design in because it's so forgiving and so easy on the hands. And if you're going to get into making jewelry for sale, you will learn to value any techniques or any shortcuts that you find that help keep your hands from getting as tired as quick. Copper takes patina beautifully, whether it's a liver of sulfur patina or you get a bag of salt and vinegar chips and crumble it up and bury the piece in the salt and vinegar chip crumbs for a week. You can just get so many different beautiful patinas on copper. It's kind of hard to resist. And it has a really long history of being part of jewelry making for like centuries and centuries. So it's kind of hard to go wrong starting off with copper. Once you've had a chance to develop your own style and develop your skill set, you'll certainly want to branch out into other metals, and that's great. But I know that I'll be surprised if you don't experience something like I did. When I first started dabbling in sterling silver, I had such performance anxiety. I was never so grateful for muscle memory as I was during those first few exercises. I really recommend against trying to skin off old electrical wire and use it for a couple of reasons. Number one, the process of skinning the wire itself is going to leave tool marks and it's going to harden the wire. So the only way, as I mentioned earlier, to deal with the hardening of the wire is to anneal it. And then you're getting into using a torch and having to do all the cleanup and preparation to actually use that wire or to turn it to dead soft wire. Electrical wire doesn't come in the same range of gauges that jewelry wire does. And you're going to have a harder time not buying a really long piece of electrical wire to skin. So there's certainly a place for recycled electrical wire, for those who are set up to deal with it and those who might be doing wire sculpture or things of that nature. But for the beginning jewelry maker, I really recommend that you stay away from trying to recycle electrical wire. But since we're talking about recycling, that's the last thing I wanted to talk about today. It's really important right from the beginning. The minute you start making jewelry, you are going to start making scrap. And the best way to deal with that is to have a little container on your work surface where you corral all the bits as you're going along. And then maybe transfer those over to a washed out peanut butter jar that has a nice secure lid, or an old coffee can. And once those containers start to fill up, you can go visit your neighborhood recycling depot, and most metal recyclers will actually pay you money for bringing back sorted metal like that. So you help keep it out of the landfill, and you have a little bit more money to reinvest in your jewelry making. So it's a win-win for everybody. Anyway, I hope the talking head hasn't been too hard. These are just a few things about wire that I wish I'd known from the beginning. And I hope you find this helpful. And I also hope, if you haven't already, you will hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. That'll help me keep on making videos like this for you in the future. You have a great day and stay safe wherever you are. Have a good one.